bales of tasty cheddar and Swiss cheese that she served and sold at the Cackleberry Club. Tapping her brakes lightly, Suzanne coasted along until she spotted Mike's familiar tilting mailbox up ahead. This behemoth of dented metal was surrounded by a tangle of bright red bittersweet and sat beside a hand-painted sign that read Cloverdale Farm, farm fresh milk and cheese. Suzanne turned into the driveway and crunched her way down a narrow gravel road. A quarter of a mile later, her car rolled to a stop in Mike's farmyard. The place was picture-perfect, an old-fashioned farm built in the early 1900s by hard-working German immigrants. Off to the right was a classic American Gothic farmhouse, complete with finials, balustrades, and a rambling old front porch. Straight ahead was a faded red hip-roofed dairy barn. Several smaller buildings that housed bales of hay and farm tools were scattered off to the left, and a large woodsy pasture butted up close to the house and barn. Suzanne slid out of her car and scuffed a toe of her boot into the gravel. "Hey, Mike," she called out. "It's Suzanne." She let out a breath. "From the Cackleberry Club." The big sliding barn door stood wide open, and she expected to see Mike's broad, grinning face appear at any moment. When, after a minute or two, Mike didn't duck out and greet her, Suzanne decided he must be all the way back in the barn, tending his cows. Or maybe he was in the adjacent cheese workshop, a place with a pleasant, yeasty smell and gleaming stainless steel pipes, tanks, and tables. The place where all the cheese magic happened. "No problem," Suzanne said, striking out for the barn. She'd talked to Mike a couple of days ago and told him she needed to replenish her larder with a few wheels of his delicious cheese. He'd told her to stop by any time. Well, now was any time. Suzanne ducked inside the barn, going from dazzling sunlight to a dim interior. She blinked hard a couple of times, trying to adjust her eyes, keenly aware of the mingled sharp scents of cows and hay. "Mike!" she called again. This time Suzanne received an answer, but it wasn't from Mike. Instead, she was greeted by a cacophony of loud bellows. "What?" she murmured. A few steps down the center aisle, and Suzanne was confronted by the urgent, upturned faces of 4 dozen cows bawling unhappily at her. Cows that clearly hadn't been milked yet. Haven't been milked yet? But it's 20 after 12. These poor things have been waiting all morning? Where was Mike? Suzanne wondered as she tiptoed through the barn. On either side, cows continued to blat anxiously as they stretched their necks out to greet her, to plead for help. And the farther in she ventured, the more the cows' mooing turned to pitiful moans. Where the stanchions ended, there were 2 box stalls. Animals moved about restlessly in there, too. Horses that tossed their heads and banged their hooves hard against the wooden walls. What was going on? "Mike!" Suzanne called out, trying to keep a slight quaver out of her voice. "Are you back here?" She hesitated and peered into the dimness ahead of her, where dust motes twirled lazily and worn leather halters and bridles hung on wooden pegs. Then she added, "Are you okay?" Moving toward the wooden door that led into the cheese workshop, Suzanne felt a prickle of unease. The hairs on the back of her neck were starting to stand up straight. Really? Now why was that? Then her heart did a little thump-bump inside her chest, and her breathing became a little more rapid. Had something happened to Mike? Or was she simply overreacting to the agitation of the cows? Suzanne tamped down her fears and rapped her knuckles sharply against the white wooden door of the cheese workshop. "Mike, are you in there?" No answer. Gathering up her nerve, Suzanne put a hand flat against the door and gave it a shove. Instead of swinging open on its hinges, the door creaked open a couple of inches and stopped. Frowning, she pushed again, this time with a little more force. No way. Something seemed to be blocking it. Suzanne leaned forward and touched her cheek to the door, the smooth wood feeling cool against her skin. Then she poked her nose in, trying to peer around the edge of the door. The first thing she saw was a green rubber boot turned sideways on the damp cement floor.